Hey guys, welcome back. Besiege early access coverage. This is episode 10. I'm Enigmius, and today the Lobber continues. Now, before we get tucked into the actual real building today, I just wanted to show you this is an earlier attempt at getting the boulder loading system complete. Now, what you see is 5 rows of 5 boulders. Call it the holding chutes, and they're too heavy. What more can be said? I just wanted to, before we got stuck into the building and the bracing and all these other things, I just wanted to demonstrate the kinds of forces that we're dealing with. It's very, very heavy. All we need to do is get it so that the machine survives that initial drop of the boulders into the chutes, because you can't place them in the chutes. You have to place them in the air somehow, and then they drop when you start the simulation, and that impact can be absolutely devastating to the machine itself. But what we need to do is get it to survive that impact and then be able to tip up those holding chutes into the single loading chute. Get 5 boulders in the loading chute. You can see we've got it, what's left of it up there, and then that will, as necessary, tip up to shift boulders to the end of it where it can be grabbed by the loading arm, dropped into the cradle so that it can be grabbed by the lobbing arm, and then we lob it. And that's the basics of the machine. Very, very simple in concept, but takes a little bit of work in reality. So since that last episode, I did obviously a little bit of fooling around to get things sorted out and arrived at certain conclusions about how best to proceed, at least to try to proceed. And it's really so straightforward. I wanted to be a little bit careful about how I put this video together, because it's very easy sometimes to get trapped into the idea of thinking that everyone is always interested in every step of the project. When it's kind of repetitive, like what we're building now, I don't think everyone's going to be that interested. So we're going to switch the order around a little bit. We're going to build the loading chute, and then that will present the basis for how the holding chutes will work. It's just we're going to have 5 of them instead of just the one loading chute, and that way we'll have a total of 25 boulders available to us at the beginning of any given simulation, which is far more than we would ever actually need unless we really were having fun lobbing boulders. So we're using the ballast blocks to hold the half pipes that will hold the boulders, and then we're using braces to hold everything together. Now, I'm okay with it falling like that. There's nothing actually holding it up in the air, but you'll notice when it fell, the ballasts and the half pipes all held together. There weren't any that weren't connected. So that was the test that we were doing, was making sure that after we put everything together that things were actually properly connected. Now, the side closest to the rest of the machine, the loading arm and all that other stuff, gets a hinge. And the hinge is basically just there to allow the assembly to tip up, and then the other side of the loading chute will get a piston, and the piston's job is just to push up on that side of the chute, which kind of tips it so that the boulders will roll down to the loading arm. Again, mechanically, the concept is very simple, and we just have to kind of follow through and make sure that I love doing that. It's with the ballast, I find it's really important to test often to make sure that things are connected the way we expected them to be. So now you can see this test, the hinge is connected to the ballast, which is connected to the other ballast, which is connected to the half pipe. So we're in good shape so far. We're just going to be doing that throughout the whole process, is kind of add a few blocks, test to make sure that it works, and then carry on. The biggest thing here, and what takes up the most time in a build like this, is the bracing. And there's going to be a ton of bracing in this episode, and there's going to be even more bracing in the next episode, because we need a little bit more tweaking in order to get everything to work, and we weren't able to fit it all in this episode. So what I've done is I've sped up the really protracted bracing sessions so that they run at 4 times the normal speed, and that way you can see how it's going together. And I don't think anyone really needs to see in real time how each and every brace is being placed for something this size. It's just, it's kind of a waste of time, I think. And we're also going to be doing a lot of the bracing on the holding chutes after I show you how one of our first tests with the new holding chutes worked out. Just because then you can watch up to a certain point, everything gets built and put together, And then you see the test. And then if you really want to see how everything was braced and assembled for the holding chutes, then you can watch afterwards. And, it just gives everyone opportunity to decide how much time they want to invest in watching the video based on what they want to know. So you can see really investing a lot of time into the bracing here. And it's almost like we're making an arch out of braces. And that's where we're hoping we're going to get the strength in this design from, is the orientation of the braces and setting things up in such a way that everything is kind of pushing on everything else. And they're all very strong, so that means that it holds things up and it doesn't bend and flex as much as it might want to. That's one of the things that I noticed in a previous sort of attempt with various different kinds of structures in this sort of boulder holding kind of chute, is that they really like to bend in the middle. Like, they get really, really bendy and flexible, and that can be kind of a problem. So we want to avoid that. And then holding everything up, just like we've been doing with the rest of the machine up to this point, or, prior to this, is using braces and kind of setting things up in 45-degree angles and any other kind of angle we can sling together, just so that we're having multiple points that's distributing the load, so that you don't have things getting yanked apart forcibly. Just yet, we don't have enough weight in place yet to start tearing things apart forcibly. And then as we need it, we extend the wooden base, which is, as always, the weak point I found out in this entire structure is the wood and the base, and everything else is like you can see here. You can get sort of an idea. The problem that I'm experiencing here is you can see kind of the piston pushes it up just enough to get things rolling in the right direction. That's fine. But the piston has a little bit of flex down below where you think it's going to start. So it's actually, if you were to just kind of fill it up with boulders and leave it, they would all roll out the opposite side of the chute because the piston is sitting on a spring. It's kind of like a suspension kind of thing almost. And one of the easiest ways to remedy that kind of negative motion that we don't want is to use these rails, the sliding rails that you basically attach to the piston. They will move with the piston, but they offer more rigidity so that the piston can't actually, bounce on the spring and fall down below its original starting position. And also, we want to make sure that we've got enough strength in the pistons. Notice I'm now using the plural form, so that when the chute is loaded with boulders, we're actually going to be able to lift it. One piston isn't enough for that. One piston isn't even really enough to lift the chute as it is. So we added 2 more pistons, so now it's a total of 3, with 3 sliding rails to keep them rigid and not allow them to bounce below the starting point. And with those in place, as long as everything's connected properly, you can see it lifts and then it goes down and it stops. It doesn't keep going below the starting point. So it's not going to be fast rolling boulders, and that's probably good because that would probably lead to some out of control situations, but it'll work. And for just an opportunity to practice with different components, different blocks, it's not too bad. So tweaking, reworking, have to make sure everything works up to a certain standard before we move on, and just making sure it's as strong as we can get it before we do. I'm learning very quickly that even after you've done everything and you think it's done, there's always a final bracing pass that you can do to add more braces and make things stronger. And it makes a huge, huge difference when you've done it. But when you're in the middle of building something and you just want to see how it works, sometimes you forgo all of the braces that are necessary. So in this case, just redoing the location of the pistons, and then we'll put in some more ballast blocks so that we can set up the rails and make sure all 3 pistons, of course, have to be connected to that middle block that's connecting the chute to the center piston. Otherwise, having the other 2 is kind of pointless. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is how much of a difference it makes to get used to the UI. And I mean, there are certain hotkeys, Control C and Control V for copy and paste. Very, very useful when you're setting up the ballast weights, or even keybinds for multiple blocks that have the same keybind. But also, you don't have to close the setup windows for each individual block after you set the values to whatever you want. So when you're talking about, say, going through and adjusting the weight on 30 ballast blocks at a time, you can just click on a ballast block, hit Control V to enter the stuff that you had from the last ballast block, and you hit Control C to copy it to the clipboard, and then you hit Control V, and you can just click on the next ballast block and you're just clicking in Control V, click Control V, click Control V. It goes so much faster than if you have to go and stop and click the little red X in the top right corner to make the window go away, because you don't have to. And it's just these little tricks that I was like, wow, everything is so much faster now that I know that. So now you can see actually another good view of what I was talking about with the sliding rails and the 3 pistons. And now we're just going to kind of brace them all and make sure that they're as well connected as we can make them. One of the things that is very easy to do is to connect things that shouldn't be connected. Like, for example, if you've got a hinge and you connect a brace to it on the top section and then down to something that's not going to move, the hinge won't be able to move because it needs to be able to, you know, rotate around something, and the brace will stop that from happening. But all kinds of little things that you make mistakes. It seems to make sense when you're doing it until you actually go to test it and then things don't move. One of the things to check is make sure you haven't braced things together that you didn't want. So now for the loading chute, we're in pretty good shape. It's a little bit bulky. It's definitely heavy, but it seems strong enough that it'll be able to sustain everything that we need it to do. So we're bracing up the lower sections a little bit, because I was noticing even with just the loading chute that I was seeing some motion in the wood down on the ground, and we don't want to see motion in the wood down on the ground. So in just a second here, we're going to jump ahead and you're going to see the finished holding chutes, and you're going to see what happens when we press play after we thought we had everything properly braced together with no boulders. There will be no boulders in this test. Look at all the braces, look at the chutes, and they go up, but then when they come down, the impact is it's still a work in progress. It just needs more braces is what it needs. What happened there, the failure, of course, was the wood. The energy from the impact of lowering the chutes traveled down the braces to the wood broke apart, and everything went to hell from there. And I happened to be on the map with bombs, so that kind of led us into a situation where things were exploding, things caught on fire, the fire spread. No machine. But that's okay, because fortunately it's not permadeath for your machine when it explodes and catches on fire and flies apart. So this is the construction of the loading chutes. Like I say, for those who really want to see it kind of block by block, it's sped up because it's mostly just duplication, adding multiples of each different kind of block. Lots of braces, lots of ballast blocks, lots of parameter editing. And then the next episode, we're going to be focusing on making sure we have enough bracing in place, hopefully getting it to survive the impact of dropping boulders into the chutes, and then we'll actually be able to fire the thing, which will be sort of the culmination of the entire project, which took longer than I thought, but I've still been having a lot of fun with it. And then we'll go on to the next project. So please leave your comments and feedback. It's about 5.5, 6 minutes, I think, left of this if you're interested. If you want to be notified when I add new videos, you can always subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media in the information box below the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.